Crypto Trader is proudly brought to you by Element, a full-service investment bank for the digital token capital markets.
Welcome to a very special edition of Crypto Trader, brought to you from the city where people come to make their fame and their fortune. Yeah, we're in Las Vegas, and the fortune that we're talking about is not the fortune that they make in the casinos, but the fortune that people are making trading cryptocurrency. We're here for the Money 2020 and Coin Agenda conferences, which are two of the biggest cryptocurrency conferences in Las Vegas. For the next 2 days, we're going to be bringing you news, reviews, we're going to be meeting people, we're going to be talking about ICOs, about Bitcoin, and the future of crypto. So stay tuned. So we're at the Money 2020 conference in Las Vegas, and I bumped into Bobby Lee, who just gave an amazing talk. Bobby, you've been operating in China for quite a while. Lots of regulation coming out of China.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about what's going on with the regulators in China.
So they've decided finally to close down all Bitcoin exchanges. So no more Bitcoin exchanges, no more ICOs, no more information sites. Essentially, they want to put a stop to all sort of Bitcoin commercial activity. And it is their right and purview to do so. So they've asked us to close down our exchange.
But from what we hear, from what we're getting in the press, we're getting in the press a lot that they're actually opening it up again. I mean, I saw an announcement this morning from Hyobi that they're going to be functioning again.
That is probably those are rumors. Probably those are just wishful thinking.
Do you think China's going to ban Bitcoin mining at any stage?
I don't think so. I think for now they've made it clear to us that Bitcoin mining will still be allowed. And the reason is fundamentally Bitcoin mining is just computation. It's just calculating things, finding answers to solutions, and you can't really stop that. Right?
And what was the main issue they had with Bitcoin trading? Was it the KYC?
I think it's a combination. There's the fraud stuff, there's the KYC stuff, the lack of identity, there's the foreign currency controls, there's the Bitcoin not being a currency, taxation issues, there's security risks, there's all bunch of stuff, trading risks and all that stuff.
And over-the-counter trading in China, is that also closed, banned?
It's not officially banned. I don't know if they will take a stance to like it or to dislike it. So far, we have not heard a clarification on that.
How does this affect your business?
Yeah, we actually have two aspects to our business. We have a China-centric business that's focused on the China market, and we have the international side of the business. So the international side of the business is not affected. That's called BTCC. The China side of the business is called BTC China, so that has been affected. We're no longer operating an exchange. We closed that down last month. So that's the situation right now. You know, just because the exchange is closed doesn't mean that Bitcoin is closed in China. It doesn't mean that our company is closed in China. So things still move on.
Today, can I transact with Bitcoin in China using a credit card, for example?
Not with a credit card. You can't buy anything in China with a credit card.
So you guys are obviously focusing all your efforts outside of China at the moment?
Yes, that's right.
And how big was your outside of China business relative to your inside of China business?
They're different businesses. Our wallet business has always been a global outside of China business. The exchange business has primarily been an in-China business. And our mining pool business has traditionally been in China, but that's not affected. So it's been taken care of.
And you believe that this is the end of Bitcoin in China, at least for now?
Well, it's the end of Bitcoin exchanges in China. It's not the end of Bitcoin in China.
Because you can still mine.
Because people can still own Bitcoin, people can still mine Bitcoin, people can still carry their Bitcoin and do whatever they want with it. It's just information.
And if they want to buy, where would they buy from?
That's difficult. I think it's hard. It'll be hard to find a place to buy Bitcoin.
Awesome.
Yeah. So,
Bobby Lee, thank you so much. Great to have you on our show.
Thank you.
A super investor, or rather what I like to call a venture capitalist turned ICO investor. Gil Pancino, you were very active in the venture capital space.
I was early executive at eBay and then have been involved in several other tech companies, and along the way I got excited about investing in startups as a way to help create change. I'm an investor now, at last count, at 200 to 300 different startups. As crypto came along, I was an early investor in Ripple and Brave, as well as Filecoin and some other ones. So I've really sort of pivoted almost entirely to looking at crypto.
When did you buy your first Bitcoin?
It was only about 2 years ago, so I am not the earliest guy in the world on Bitcoin.
And when did you hear about blockchain technology? Or when did the penny drop that blockchain technology may actually become so disruptive?
I mean, it was starting to see these business models where the company gets out of the way and the marketplace is able to operate without really any central control. And that, you know, for a lot of tech people is a crazy idea, crazy good.
3 months ago, when you said the word ICO, you could raise $30 million in a heartbeat. Today, I look at the ICOs and many of them can't even raise 30% of what they set out to raise. What's happening? Is the ICO market maturing?
No, I think it's actually pretty simple. The demand is still there, it's just that the supply is growing faster.
So you think it's a supply problem? You think there's just too many ICOs?
There's a lot of deals right now. I mean, you look at the calendar and it's just hard to keep track of how many things are out there fundraising. Quality tends to sort of rise to the top, and so the good ones are still raising a ton of money. It's just hard to find the good ones now.
First of all, where is this money coming from? Is it all still private client money, or have the institutions and come in and started putting in money yet?
There's a ton of institutional money. I mean, you've got folks like Pantera and Polychain, who are the older school hedge funds. You've got a ton of new little hedge funds, and you've got guys like Goldman and JP Morgan Chase starting to trade Bitcoin.
How do you differentiate the bad ones from the good ones?
It's the same as it was in angel investing. There's a handful of signals people look at. The first is you look at the team. Is it a good team? Do they have a technical background? Have they been doing this a while? Or is it a 22-year-old working out of his basement? You look at who the other investors or advisors are smart people saying this is a good idea. And then you think about the market and the product itself, and you ask yourself, do I believe this is something that could work? And I will tell you as an angel, I've believed in markets and been wrong more often than I've been right.
But the ones that you got right are eBay and some other big names.
I mean, I've lost 100% of my money on a whole bunch of startups, and I made about 700 times my money on LinkedIn. So you can make a few bad decisions as long as you can find one good one.
So today, when you look at the crypto market, anything that sticks out for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a handful of deals I really like. One of them that I participated in sort of late on was Civic. Yeah. Vinny and his team are serial entrepreneurs. The product is picks and shovels for the blockchain economy. It makes a ton of sense to me. I bought a very small amount in the ICO, and I think they're going to do a very nice job, but I'm not sort of super involved. Another one I got more involved in is called Prize, spelled Pryze, and they are a sweepstakes on the chain. So as blockchain becomes sort of more popular, everyone's trying to figure out how to buy their first blockchain, or whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or Civic or others. Prize lets people enter a sweepstakes and win some. So for those who think a wallet's too hard to figure out, you can just sort of enter a sweepstakes and win a prize.
Let's talk about Prize. Is the ICO currently happening? When is that?
It is not. The project is underway, and you can sign up for the newsletter, but there's no sort of fundraising going on right now.
Cool. Are there any ICOs or token sales right now that you're kind of looking at and going, I think I'm going to get into that one?
Yeah, I would say EOS, which continues to have their public crowd sale, is probably one of the more interesting ones because it's a real protocol.
And you still think that right now it's a good time to buy?
I mean, the price came down a fair amount, and I think ultimately it's one of those few protocol coins where it may actually have really significant world-changing value.
Speaking about EOS, I mean, it's been likened to the Tezos project in terms of the way they're raising money and how long they're raising money for. Is there no risk that Tezos has got all this bad PR going on with the foundation that's going against them? Is there no risk that these companies are raising, or these platforms are raising so much money, they're decentralized? Are we not going to keep getting repeats of what we saw in Tezos?
I mean, it's certainly possible. The Tezos story is still early days, right? I mean, there's some drama, but I'll give you an example. Tezos has problems because the foundation is not necessarily aligned with what the founders want. There's another project that's been incredibly successful that has exactly the same drama. It's called Wikipedia. It's run by a foundation. The foundation doesn't always agree with the founder, but they've managed to do okay. So I try to discount the short-term issues, but said another way, one of the signals I would look at is if a project is trying to raise north of 100 million on an uncapped note, I don't like it.
You don't like it. You were...
You know, if you're an investor in these sorts of things, or if you want to buy some tokens, you'd like to think that they could go up in value at some point, and uncapped notes are sort of the worst way to do that.
Well, that's my problem. Not even uncapped, but companies that just continue to raise past 30, 40, 50, 60 million. I don't know many companies that need 60, 70 million to launch a product.
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, Filecoin raised 100 plus million, and I'm super bullish on it still.
Okay, so let's talk about Filecoin. One of the most prominent ICOs that happened. The way that their ICO was done, friends and family got huge discounts, and anybody else had to pay up to $5 for the token.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. The next question that I have is, can you imagine the Filecoin guys? They're a small team. Can you imagine them going to a traditional VC, standing in front of a VC and going, we need $200 million. How many VCs would give them that kind of money?
Well, I'll give you an analogy. There's a company called Magic Leap. I still haven't seen their product, and they've raised almost $1 billion from venture capital. Like, it does happen. What it takes is a stupendous team with a really big idea that has great tech. It's incredibly rare.
This looks awfully like the dot-com boom where we're at the moment with ICOs. Yep. Are you, with all your experience, expecting a bust?
I mean, these things absolutely go in cycles. There's no doubt about it, and things are a little frothy right now. On the other hand, I was just on a panel a few minutes ago here, and I was telling people eBay, where I was early, went public in the middle of a bubble at a $600 million market cap. And today, after the bubble having crashed, and then a second bubble crash in 2008, it's valued at about 50 billion. So people who bought eBay at the bubble made almost 100x. I'm not sure you can assume, I guess here's one way to think about it. A bubble means a lot of things are too expensive. The problem is some of them are worth it. What's interesting about the blockchain is it has the potential to affect everything. To affect computing, to affect financial services, to affect how we buy and sell everything.
Every industry is going to be affected by the blockchain. I was always one that said I don't understand how FMCG is going to be affected, and today someone showed me how FMCG is also going to be affected by the blockchain. So I always put my guests on the spot, and
excellent.
And I know that it's going to be a tough question for you because you're the VC/ICO guy. Okay. But if I were to say to you today, you need to buy 5 tokens, you need to hold them for 3 years, no buying or selling. What are the 5 tokens?
I mean, I start with Bitcoin and Ethereum. They're core elements of everything that we're doing here.
So Bitcoin, Ethereum.
So those seem like no-brainers to me. I have bet on Filecoin, so I would put that as the third one. The next interesting ones are going to be sort of improving the exchanges, so things like 0x.
0x, very good choice.
And maybe AirSwap as well on the same thesis.
Bitcoin, it's the granddaddy of cryptocurrencies. So here we are in scaling debates and people deciding whether we should fork or shouldn't fork, and it seems that the fork's inevitable. And yet all my guests choose Bitcoin as one of the 5 coins that they would hold for 5 years' time. The way I see it, Bitcoin's technology may be a little bit, I'm going to call it old, but old. You've got chain splits coming and the guys can't decide on how to scale it properly. And even if you look at the scale, you're looking at Visa, which is about 1,000 times more scalable than Bitcoin. Do you really think that in 5 years' time, Bitcoin is going to be the peer-to-peer electronic cash system? Is it going to be able to handle the volume at cheap transaction speeds, etc., etc.?
I don't know that it's going to compete with PayPal as the most efficient payment mechanism. It's competing with gold ultimately as a place of stored value. And I think the reason even 5 years out I'm bullish on Bitcoin is simply that it is the only name most people know. And
but
so
that's
if you're
today. That's today.
I know, and I think 5 years from now, it's still going to be the first name everyone mentions. And I think just that brand affinity and the fact that it becomes some, if you go to Coinbase, what are you going to buy as a consumer as your first purchase? You buy Bitcoin because you've heard of it.
To me, it doesn't make sense that Bitcoin still holds 2/3 of the total market cap of all cryptocurrencies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 2/3 of my core holdings are in Ethereum. So as a financial investor, I agree with you. I'm just saying Bitcoin gets 90% of the press coverage and will for years to come because it is the first. In the same way that there are lots of other payment tools besides PayPal, but no one talks about Braintree or Venmo. They all talk about PayPal when they talk about electronic payments. It's the granddaddy, and it deserves the respect it got for being first.
Gil, speaking of granddaddy, it's been a pleasure to have the granddaddy of venture capital and crypto on our show. And I look forward to having you back on our show again.
It's great to be here. Thanks, sir.
Stan, I know you haven't had much sleep, and the reason why you haven't had much sleep lately is not because you're worried about anything, but it's because you're in probably the most exciting industry in the world. You're the guy, or you guys are the company that actually create these ICOs. You bring the ICOs to market.
It's been an exciting, 6 months. We've done some excellent deals. We worked, had the pleasure of working with really exciting founders like Vinny at Civic. We worked with Tyrion. We worked with the guys at Enigma. We worked with the phenomenal team at Ripio, the team at BlockV, and so these are really cutting-edge products. They're very organic to the blockchain. They're doing what this funding mechanism was set up to do, which is empowering open source software projects with open source funding, letting people not only contribute code but also contribute funds, and giving them a mechanism to incentivize new users, lowering their customer acquisition costs to zero, essentially, by letting them create their own currency.
And your role as the Element Group, what do you guys do? So I come to you and I say to you, I want to launch a token. What happens from that point?
Yeah, we help our clients structure, market, and technologically implement their token sales. So we, on day one, we sit down, we talk about what they want to accomplish, what their tokens do, what the right legal structure is, what the jurisdiction is, what the tax position should be, bring in the right advisors on those fronts, and just start running a process.
What are the key points that make you a big fan of the WAX token?
So number one, it's team. Number two, it's coming from a business that's already massive. It's the company standing behind it, Opskins, has already been incredibly successful and built this marketplace. They run one of the largest exchanges for this. And it's having a massive market impact. People are responding to the story. They are doing now a very special process just for the gamers. So they're trying to get massive buy-in from the gamer community, and they're doing a pre-sale just for the gamer community. And we have a tremendous response to date.
Cool. So WAX, very exciting. Everyone's talking about it. What's the next one that you think is a good one?
So it's a really interesting company in the chat space. The token's called Sense. Comes from a venture-backed company called Sensei, based in Los Angeles. And they have 3 million plus users on this platform already, a bot that runs across Facebook Messenger, Kik, Telegram, and what it does is it really creates an AI-like experience where you can ask somebody a question and get an answer from a real human, and at the same time you kind of get to attribute that knowledge to somebody specifically. So it's knowledge attribution on the blockchain. And so this token is a really interesting new technology that's enabling this kind of AI-like response.
Now, what determines how a token gets listed onto an exchange? I've been involved in some tokens which I think are amazing, but they'll end up being listed on, should we say, second-tier exchanges. And then the token's almost got no value because it's got no liquidity or people can't trade it.
It's really up to the exchanges, and I think there's a lot of burden on them to make sure that the tokens they're listing are in the fair way of the utility definition. They're not securities, and so they do a lot of work to make sure that the tokens they're bringing on are going to be clear from a legal perspective, but also successful, have lots of buyers, there's going to be a lot of volume, and so they're making their own business decisions. And unfortunately, there's only a few centers of liquidity in the world even today. There's 3 or 4 major exchanges that determine liquidity of most tokens. And so having more of those, having more exchanges come online is important, but also working, for us, working very closely with exchanges to make sure tokens get listed is an important part of our work.
If you can get a token listed on a certain exchange, what are the top 3 that you say, wow, if I can get my token listed on those exchanges, then I've got myself a great partner? Which are the exchanges?
So from a US perspective, it's certainly Bittrex, Kraken, and Poloniex. I think those are where the token liquidity resides.
Joining me on this very special edition of Crypto Trader is Yossi Hassan. He's a seasoned blockchain investor and he's been the MD of a Techstars program focusing on fintech. Yossi, we've been here for a couple of days now. We've heard what people are saying.
Yep.
What's your main takeout from what's going on in crypto space?
So I think what I've seen today at Coin Agenda is really about a booming industry that's still very much in its infancy, trying to figure out how to almost slow itself down and bring a lot more structure into something that seems to have run ahead of itself in many regards. Lots of opportunity, lots of exciting things, but still a lot of figuring out how do we make this thing work at a scalable level.
And what about the existing cryptocurrencies? So things like Bitcoin and Ethereum. What's your take on the pricing of Bitcoin and Ethereum now? Now you've been here, you've heard the views, you've heard what people are saying. Do you think that these assets are fairly priced?
I think it's difficult to determine if it's fairly priced, but what I have seen is that we're still very much in the infancy of this market. We have around 600,000 people who own Bitcoin in one way or another. And if you look at that in relative terms to the investment of other asset classes, we really are at the beginning of this. So where can it go from here? That's a good question, but I think it's going up.
Did you see anything here that said blockchain is actually a working technology that is solving world problems?
Well, I think what I did see is the CEO of Opskins talking about their gaming skinning platform, and actually they started accepting Bitcoin in 2016, and now it's the third most accepted payment on their platform. So the real world applicability of Bitcoin of just being a store of value, it's kind of being disproven here, where a large company that does billions in sales is actually saying their third most used payment system is Bitcoin. He did, on the other hand, say that the transaction charges have gone up 1,200% in the last year, and that's not sustainable. So we are seeing that this early technology is developing, and we need new solutions to that. So I do argue with the fact, or your question on that there is no value. There definitely is value, but there are problems. In any new technology, we're going to need to see some new solutions coming up.
And did any new tokens stick out for you? So you've now listened to a lot of tokens. When you walk out of here, are you going to go back and maybe buy or trade any token that you probably wouldn't have looked at before we got here?
So I did see the talk by the guys launching the MAP token, and what they're trying to do is create a decentralized platform that literally maps the world. Right now, the people who own the mapping technology uses GPS technology and mainly Google Maps, and that only gives you a limited view of the world when you're trying to do things like augmented reality and inserting objects. And through a decentralized platform, this is it, and crowdsource, you're now able to take pictures of the world and map it. And that's something that's fascinating to me. It's a little bit complicated. I would need to unpack it a little bit more to see whether I'd invest, but definitely piqued my interest.
And the scariest thing you saw today was definitely the platform for artificial intelligence run on the blockchain.
After seeing that, I thought, that's it, it's game over. We might as well quit. We're going to kill ourselves. Basically, the ability for AI nodes to self-program themselves, self-regulate themselves, and be able to create their own economies, and do that using AI. Basically removing the need for programmers over time. And I just think Elon Musk must be right. We are going to self-destruct.
Okay, so concluding thoughts, is this the right time to be investing in the blockchain?
I think it's very early. If you want to be in an industry that's going to revolutionize the world, this is the time to get on board. There's going to be a lot of lessons, there's going to be a lot of mistakes, there's going to be a lot of expensive lessons, but this really is the most exciting time to be in this space.
Michael, it's been an unbelievable few days in Las Vegas, the city of dreams, the city of fortune. We've been talking about people making their fortunes in crypto. You mentioned to me earlier that it's been a slightly different coin agenda this time. Tell me a little bit about what you mean by slightly different coin agenda.
Well, first of all, it's been global. This is our global event, as opposed to, it was European in Barcelona, and it was last year, really, this time it was primarily American companies. And this time is Coin Agenda Global. It's, first of all, 4 times the size in terms of attendees. Last year we had about 120 attendees, and this year 450.
So it's a much bigger conference, it's a much bigger crypto market, there's been much more adoption. We were chatting earlier and we spoke about the state of ICOs, and I highlighted to you that I'm a little bit concerned about the fact that maybe ICOs are dying and people don't want to invest in ICOs.
It's hardly dying. I mean, a year ago, ICOs were pretty rare. We had 20 exhibitors and most of them were looking for venture capital. And in the pitch contest, this year we had 50, and virtually all of them were doing ICOs.
I've been watching the ICOs. They struggle to raise the amount of money that they want to raise. At the same time, the more mature tokens, the Bitcoins and the Ethereums, which are the tokens that they're using to buy into the ICOs, are appreciating in value. Right. So your average investor is saying, look, I'm putting in a Bitcoin when Bitcoin price is $4,000 into an ICO. The Bitcoin's locked up for a month before they actually get their tokens. When they get their tokens, the Bitcoin price is at 6,000, so 50% return, and the ICO price is at 20% down.
Well, that's why you can't judge your returns based on US dollars. You have to compare them against Bitcoin. So in other words, if you're putting Bitcoin in or putting Ethereum in, you go and you look at, oh, this was 0.01 Ethereum, and what does it then trade in the aftermarket?
Mike, you've been around for forever, and you saw the dot-com bubble, and you saw the dot-com progression before the bubble and after the bubble. Do you think that we're following the same cycle, where there's a whole lot of hype, we're going to come down, and then we're going to get this slow, gradual, sustainable growth? Is that where your headspace is at?
The Gartner hype cycle, to a certain extent, but I think that it was more dramatic in the dot-com days. We're certainly early because you talk to your average cab driver, they have no idea what an ICO is. Most of them have barely heard of Ethereum or Bitcoin. Whereas by the time that the market peaked and popped in 2000, it's a $5 trillion market cap, and cab drivers are quitting their jobs to be day traders on E-Trade. We're nowhere near that yet.
Where's the institutional money when it comes to crypto?
Well, this has been actually a huge year for institutional money coming in. It's the first wave, but $2.5 billion has come in this year. About half of that was actually represented at our show. We had representatives of Alphabet Fund, 300 million, Galaxy, 500 million, started by Mike Novogratz, who had a $5 billion hedge fund. So you're starting to get people who have been in that traditional market going into crypto, but not the big institutions yet. It's people who worked with them and are nimble.
So probably we're not going to get JP Morgan investing into crypto anytime soon. We're not going to get Goldman Sachs investing. But what you're saying is the money is going to come in through different channels.
Well, right now they still see it as too small of a market. And some of these gigantic behemoths will have different divisions that concentrate on what they call alternative asset classes. I'll give you an example, sovereign wealth funds. So right now the entire market cap of all crypto trading on public blockchains is $170 billion. At Coin Agenda last year in Las Vegas, it was about $11 billion, so that's a pretty nice rise, but that's still smaller than the combined net worth of like Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos.
Mark, I must say, it was an amazing, amazing, amazing conference. I've certainly met amazing people. I've certainly learned a lot, and I think you put on a fantastic show. So congratulations, and we look forward to being here next year again, and getting more footage and getting more ICOs.
And perhaps we're going to do 5 Coin Agendas next year. So
fantastic.
This is the big one, though.
Fantastic. Next week, we're going to be at DevCon, at the Ethereum DevCon in Mexico, which takes place from the 1st to the 4th of November. And if you're not following me on Twitter, follow me on Twitter at CryptoManRun, where you'll be getting live tweets from the Ethereum DevCon. Until next week, happy trading.